I heard the analogy once of like a vitamin versus a pain pill, which like the vitamin is like, you have that, like, it's not needed, but like, it's a nice to have. It's cool. Like that's like, and that's where it's like, if you can win on like, if you have tons of marketing dollars and you can win on branding, like you can have a vitamin and like crush it. But then there's like the pain pill, and the pain pill is like when somebody actually has a problem and you have a solution and they're looking for the problem and they need you to fix their pain and you got the pill for them. Like, and it's two different school of thought. And I think with the vitamin example, like I said, with like the right marketing dollars, you could do it, but it also that feels a bit more like pushing a boulder up a hill. Versus the pain pill, it's like when you can nail that and you can figure out what the solution is, get in the front of the right people, then at least from a demand standpoint, it's like just starts flowing.
Welcome to Brands for a Better World, the podcast that brings you the stories behind the people and products building a more just, healthy, and regenerative future for us all. Tune in weekly, and together, we'll learn about why these better products and brands were created, how they're helping fix broken systems, and what you can do to support them. My hope is that you'll discover some new brands to love and get some sparks of inspiration that will help you live your best life. Hi, I'm your host, Gage Mitchell, founder of Modern Species, a sustainable brand design agency helping better brands grow to scale their impact. If you like this show, please help it grow by leaving ratings and reviews on your podcast app and by sharing your favorite episodes with your friends. Maybe this will be one of them. On this episode, I'm speaking with Kate Flynn, CEO and founder of Sun and Swell, about the power of manifesting and how it helped her accomplish big things with less stress, what limiting beliefs she's had to overcome on her journey, how her focus at Sun and Swell evolved from healthy snack bars to pantry staples and compostable packaging, and why she chose to get B Corp and Women-Owned certified. We then wrap up with a rapid round question segment. Enjoy!
Hi, I'm Kate Flynn. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Sun and Swell, and we are on a mission to create a healthier, more sustainable food industry. So we sell a variety of snacks and pantry staples. Everything's real food ingredients, all good for your body, and then packaged plastic-free and compostable packaging. So good for the planet as well.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to chat with you because I've been following Sun and Swell for a little while, but haven't chatted with you personally yet. And something that you posted on LinkedIn recently sparked the perfect opportunity for the conversation.
Yeah.
You were talking about manifesting and this challenge you've got posted up, and manifesting something I've been thinking about a little bit more lately, kind of like changing the way I think about it in my mind. So I'm curious, how did you discover the art of manifesting, and how has it helped transform your life and or business?
Yeah. So I discovered it probably about 2 years ago. One of my friends introduced me to something in the world of manifesting when it's like my friend who I'm always like, give me inspiring books. Like when I'm having trouble finding motivation or whatever, I have like the one friend who always has like all the inspiring books in the world. So anyways, she kind of introduced me to a podcast that kind of got me started on that path. But at first I was a little bit skeptical about, like, I thought manifesting was like sitting on a couch, just meditating and like hoping all the good things in the world are going to come to you. And What I learned was, yes, mindset, and whether it's meditation or journaling or however, there's a lot of different things you can do to help your mindset. While that is a component of it, it is just one component. And really the concept of manifesting, when you look at it from like a holistic point of view, it's like broken down into three things. It's setting a goal, it's taking action to achieve that goal, and it's doing mindset practices to ensure you can stay resilient and confident and, get through all the ups and downs of accomplishing that goal. Because any hard goal is like for sure going to have its downs. And so it's really to keep you in that good headspace as you go through that. And to also ensure you don't burn out while trying to accomplish those goals. I think when I finally understood it like that, it's like, oh, this is basically like, it's almost like your SMART goals framework, but like with it's like, we all know that's like the very corporate thing. It's like SMART goals. It's almost like that, except the difference is you add on the mindset practices. That's like a requirement of it. Whereas SMART goals, it's like, I think it's like actionable, realistic. I think like it wants like realistic, like manifesting kind of challenges you to push beyond the realistic, like something that you feel, kind of what's the next level up? Because a lot of us, what feels realistic to me might actually be small thinking because I'm not thinking big enough. So it kind of pushes you to set these bigger goals. And then the other difference is, like with normal goal setting versus like when you're in like doing the practice of manifestation really encourages you to set goals and take actions that feel aligned with like what keeps you happy. So that is like, if you set big ambitious goals and that require you to spend every day doing something you don't want to do, like that's going to lead to burnout and not being fulfilled. If you set big ambitious goals aligned with like what your happy place is or what energizes you, of course, there's going to be things you don't want to do along the way. Like I take like training for a marathon's a good example. If you love health and fitness and like achieving big things, like a marathon's like a great thing to do. If you're not a runner, like it's going to suck, like having to do the training like 4 days a week, but like you're always going to feel it's a small part of the overall thing and you're going to feel good afterwards. However, you might like be the person that's there, like, actually, like, no, I really hate running and like, it hurts my body. Like my feet, it's like, I have like physical pain related to it. Then like, don't choose the marathon, choose like the swimming event instead, So it's like, I think that's kind of how you, anyways. And when I kind of learned, like, it was like, it's not just as a bunch of woo-woo, it's just a different way to think about accomplishing major goals in a way that doesn't lead to burnout and stress and anxiety, that it made so much more sense to me. And starting to implement those practices, like if it was the first time in like my career, which, over a decade long career, probably closer to 2 decades if I want to age myself, but like, it's the first time that I started to accomplish big things without feeling so stressed and anxious all the time. I used to stay up like in the middle of the night, like worrying about formatting on a PowerPoint slide, like little things like that. And I'm like, this isn't worth the stress. But it kind of helped me stay on track to do big things, but in a better headspace. And it was super eye-opening to me.
Yeah, that's really cool. Because I think there's a lot of stuff out on the interwebs or in books where, like you pointed out, that you kind of have this idea that manifesting is sitting on the couch hoping things will change, or repeating a mantra in your head, and then like the universe will just bring those things to you and you don't have to do anything for it. Or I've even seen some stuff on social media where it's like, listen to this tone, and then like $20,000 will show up, and it's like, what? Are you kidding me? And I think a lot of people think that's what manifesting is. But similar to you, I kind of realized that it's basically just branding is kind of the way I've been thinking about it lately, because it's about defining who you are, what you have to offer the world, what you want to achieve or what you want to get, and then just putting it out there, like talking about it and inviting others on the journey, because maybe they want the same thing, or maybe they just want to help you. And so for me, it's like about making it easier for the rest of the world to help you achieve your goals as part of manifesting, because then it's not just you out there slogging away at the work. If I tell my friends that I want to write this book, now they're all going to be encouraging me too, and like cheering me on and saying they'll buy my first copy or offering to help read some stuff or give some notes or whatever. Whereas if you never do that kind of manifesting kind of stuff of thinking about what you want, first of all, you wouldn't know you wanted to write a book. And second of all, you wouldn't have told anyone. And then you'd just be sitting there feeling unfulfilled. So to some degree, I feel like it's similar to your notes about like adding in the mindset and stuff. I think it's adding in some of that introspection, of course, like to really figure out who you are and what you want. But then it's often just, in my mind, it's about communicating it. Because if you don't communicate it, you're on your own. And then it's going to be a long, long road of just pushing that boulder uphill. Yeah.
And it's such a good way of saying that. And it's such a good point. Like, I think that the woo-woo way of saying it, like, this is how like a more woo-woo manifesting description, that would be like, put it out to the universe and the universe will give you what you want. That's like the woo way of saying it. Like the logical way of saying it is like, no, tell people, like put it out there on social media, tell your friends, like tell your network. So you're held accountable because you told somebody. Like it's, it's like if you want to write the book, well, first of all, like you said, like get clear on what you want, because if you don't know what you want, you don't, and if you don't like just define what you want, you're not going to work towards it. And then telling other people, so you're like, shoot, well, I like told all my friends I'm going to write a book. Like I gotta like, they're going to ask me about it if I don't do it. And it's like, it's so funny because that's actually like the reason why I've been like talking more about manifesting recently is because it's had such a big impact on my life. Like, so like just night and day different. And I think I've like gotten some friends like to like kind of follow suit too. And it's like really impacted them. And I kept talking about like, oh my gosh, I want to like I want to like teach people in a bigger way. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but like, I'm like, want to like get it. Like I want this, like, is so energizing to me, like to help people, like to see this shift in mindset. And I've been talking, I've been talking about this for a year, and like, finally, like one of like my friends is like, why don't you just put something out there for me? I was like, that's a good idea. And like, I think that's the post that like led us to like talking about this, but it's funny. It's like just having somebody, like just putting it out there to the world, like it just holds you accountable and gets other people rooting for you. And exactly what you said.
Yeah, I'm curious because you said that this was the first time you were able to accomplish big things without some of that like destructive stress that was going on of like worrying about maybe things that didn't matter so much or something. But what do you feel like it was just kind of aligning your actions with your intentions and goals that made the big difference? Or do you feel like it was part of what we're talking about now is like you set those goals and you put it out into the world and then other people helped make it happen, which reduced your stress? Or is there something else going on that helped you achieve bigger things?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit, maybe a little bit of both. So like when I think like of like what was like I have, personal goals and career goals. And when I think about like, I'll use the career goal because that's probably like this one to talk about. And like, what are some over the past 2 years before I started practice manifesting versus like after. So like one of the big career goals that I had was like push our business past 7 figures. And it like, I feel like with any startup, like you're trying to do this forever. Like you feel like it's going to take like 1 year. It takes like much longer. And like, that was like a big goal I had. And we were getting like so close, but we just like weren't getting there. And it's when I think that's when I was like starting to feel a little burnt out. Like I was like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I've been doing this, like this should have happened faster. And what the practice of manifesting tells you is like, first of all, like surrender with like the fact that everything's happening like in the pace it's meant to happen. So like that is like a little bit of the woo side of it. But like that's like the mindset stuff. Like if you can get like yourself to just accept the fact that like the things that are going to happen in my life are going to happen. I just can't, or the way that they're supposed to happen. And I can't always control the timeline. But if I keep following like my authenticity and like my, like what feels right to me and all that stuff, like they'll eventually happen. And I think what I was realizing was like one of the breakthroughs I had is like, I felt like one of the reasons we hadn't hit 7 figures is because we were like kind of going in a few different like directions, like doing what we felt like was really like the right thing versus like doing some like following some strategy based on like the noise of the industry. Like, oh, like I see other people doing this, like, so I should do this too, because like and that's like your ego pulling you into like what you think you should be doing versus like what you know you should be doing. And the concept of like manifesting, getting clear on like, not just like a financial goal, but like how we wanted to get the financial goal, how we wanted to get there, like just allowed us to focus a bit more and get to that place. And then also like, I think one of the biggest things was it like allowed me to do so without so much stress and anxiety. Like up until I started, I was so stressed all the time. And like, I realized it was a me thing. Like I used to blame it on my old jobs. Like I started as a CPA, then I was a management consultant. And like, I was like, oh, it's the job. Like I'm in these really high stress jobs, even though it was funny to me because I'd like look around, I'd see other people like not really stressed. Like I was always stressed and anxious, and not just me, a handful of, like probably half of us were like that. And the other half were.
Yeah.
And then I dove into entrepreneurship, and the first like couple of years was just like super fun and like exciting and change. And then it started to get these pressures again, the stress again. And I was like, oh, it's a me problem. It's like not a job problem. Like no matter what situation I'm in, I'm going to find a way to make it stressful on myself. And so I think like the mindset practices that I learned from manifesting, like are what made me be able to do it in a place like without so much like just inward pressure on myself. And that helped me think clearer. It helped me like be like better at decision making. It helped me be more confident in my decisions. So it was kind of like just a combination. I think a combination of all of them is just like having an aligned, like a vision that was aligned with where I really felt versus like what I thought we should, like what I knew in my heart we should versus what I thought we should based on like industry stuff. And
that makes sense. So it's kind of like quieting the fear in your mind. Because I think when we set some goals sometimes and we're out there trying to make it work and it's not clicking immediately, when we start panicking a little bit and being like, oh shit, I better look to see what everyone else is doing to achieve this, or I should try some new things, or, FOMO, or maybe fear that you're on the wrong path or whatever starts bubbling up. But to your point, if you've given yourself patience and you're saying, you know what, I can take the time to follow through on my plan and I'm going to ignore the rest of the noise. I'm going to just let that fear wash over me and just say, hello, fear. I don't need you today, but thanks for coming and checking in on me. And then you just keep with your plan. Then you'll actually do your plan, which was probably pretty good in the first place. And then get closer to that manifestation, but also just give yourself some patience and time, because in my experience, everything takes longer than you think it's going to. So having a little patience and waiting for that breakthrough could be all the difference in the world. I think so many companies, quote unquote, fail just because they gave up too soon.
I totally agree.
Just because, they were probably heading in the right direction. They just didn't wait long enough to get over the kind of hurdles or challenges that they were facing.
And that's where like the resilience comes in, and which is like where like that mindset component of the manifest, it like teaches you like, it's going to happen. It's all coming. And it's like, it's funny because I talk to a lot of other entrepreneurs and we're all in the exact same boat. Like we're all in this boat of like, you have imposter syndrome. Like you feel like you're doing something like outside your element. Like you're like, there's all of these like external factors you have to think about. And, it's funny because I feel like I've had these like moments throughout building our company where I'm like, it's so clear to me in hindsight. And I've gotten to the point where now I can identify it in the moment. I used to not be able to identify a moment, but now I can. And I'm like, this is like the thing. This is like the test from the universe. I can either like walk away or I can stick with this. And it's a chapter of the journey that's like on my How I Built This story. Like, it's like, it used to be like, and that's how I like get through them now. Cause I'm like, nope, like this is just a chapter. There's going to be a lot of lessons learned through it. And like, even like, so like I started like the manifesting stuff in 2022, and 2023 was like, it's a really hard year. It was like one of those years. It's funny because we manifested all this like growth, and like the growth came, but then operationally it was a really, really challenging year for us. Like we were trying to scale something that's like it just never been done before, that we've never been done before. Our partners had like, so there was just, it was operationally a very, very challenging year. And I stopped all the mindset stuff for like 4 months because I was like, I gotta just like I went into like the old me, which is like, just gotta work harder, grind harder, I'll get it done. And I was like, this is even after I started my manifesting journey. I slipped for like a several month period. And I was like downward spiraling. And then, we went on we had this vacation planned, which I like would not have taken if it wasn't already like, if we hadn't already booked it, but like we already had it booked. And, it was our 10-year anniversary. My husband and I had booked like a trip like a year in advance to go to Italy. And I was like, I can't go now. Like things are too crazy. I can't go. We're just going. Oh, no. And that was like the reset I needed to like start spiraling up again. And it's like, and like, it's basically like, okay, like same challenges, same stuff, like just as hard as it was 2 weeks ago, but like I can start to approach this with like more level headed and like the recognizing of like, I don't need to like this. It just is what it is. Like, this is the chapter we're in. We can get through it. And it's amazing just like how much it was all mindset. It was like 100% mindset. Nothing else changed. Like 100% mindset.
I love that way of thinking of it though. This is just a chapter in my story, right? Because I think so many people in general, but entrepreneurs, well, since this is our conversation here, so many entrepreneurs hit these hurdles, and maybe that starts creating this dialogue in their head of, well, I guess I'm not good enough at this, or I guess, imposter syndrome, or I guess, maybe this business model is not right, or maybe my products, whatever. It's just all these things start popping up of thinking this is like permanent and catastrophizing and just getting caught up in the challenge rather than just saying to yourself, you know what? I knew there was going to be hurdles. This is one of them. I'm going to get past this hurdle. And 3 years from now, this is just going to be a fun story to tell. So let's just one step at a time, one foot in front of the other. Let's just work on this like we have every other hurdle, or I have every other challenge that's happened in my life. So I like that phrasing specifically of, this is just a chapter in my story. Don't let it be the end. Let it just be a chapter on your journey. Yes, right?
That'll make you better in the future. And I heard this, I actually have heard this twice in 2 different places in the past week. So I like feel like it's meant to be shared, is that every decision you make is either out of fear or out of love. and like just try to make more decisions out of love. And I'm like, that's so fascinating, because if you think about like how many decisions are you making? Like when you're making decisions, how many are you making? Because you're like, oh my gosh, like this is like everything catastrophizing, like everything. I just got to do this, versus like taking a step back and saying like, okay, like how can I make a decision that like is more of like a heart-filled, and it still can be logical and practical, but like there's like two different ways to make decisions and think about decisions. And I think you just want to like make more decisions every day out of love. And I think like walking away from your company in a low point is and for some people it's fear-based. For other people, it might be like, you know what, like I've had enough. That could be for some people a love-based decision too. It just depends on why you're making the decision. If you're making the decision to give up because you feel like a failure and because like you feel like you can't, that's the wrong way to make a decision. Versus like if there's other reasons that I think are valid reasons to walk away. But there's also like it's not a reason to walk away because you feel like you can't, or because like you feel like you're not worthy of it, or you feel like you're not able to, you know,
or even just it's too hard, right? Like everything worth doing in life is going to be hard. So you don't turn away just because it's hard. Because one thing I often tell myself, you know, on the entrepreneurial journey is like, oh man, it would be so much easier if I could just go get a job and have a paycheck and shut my brain off at the end of the day and not have to worry about all the things. Yep. But at the same time, that would be really difficult for me too, because that's not the way I'm wired. Like I'm not wired to, you know, sit at a desk and do someone else's tasks that they've assigned to me.
Totally.
Like I'm wired to like create my own path and my own journey and come up with fun challenges and whatever. So like it's just a different type of hard, right? So choose the type of hard you want. You can choose the type of hard where it's like, I'm working hard for someone else's vision and accomplishing someone else's goals, or I can work hard for my own vision and my own goals. And so, you know, it's going to be hard one way or another. Absolutely. Why not go down the path where it's more rewarding for you? And I think you've also kind of been hinting at this a little bit too, that I know you've talk about sometimes is the masculine, feminine energy balance, right? Because you were talking about like you got stressed and you went back into your just hustle, just work harder to get it done kind of masculine energy, but then you had to come back to your feminine energy of being like, wait a minute, let's slow down, let's take a breath, let's think about this, let's kind of realign, etc. And it's not about having all one or the other, it's about having balance or harmony between those two voices. Right?
And the balance might be a little bit different for everybody. Like there's not a perfect balance, but it's like my favorite example of describing it is like the extreme masculine energy is like the investment banker who works really hard and makes all this money, but literally works so much they can't even enjoy the money or spend the money, or they don't have any relationships. And then the extreme feminine energy is like the blissed out yoga teacher who's so happy, but they're super broke. And like they're, you know, like it's kind of like, there's nothing wrong with either of those, you know, but like, I think for most of us, we're looking for something in the middle where like we have whatever abundance means to us. Like we all have different like financial abundance goals or financial wealth goals, which is like for me, it's like, it's all based on like freedom and like how like more I'm super fulfilled working. I love working, but I also want to balance to be able to have time with my kids and like just things like that. Like, so we all have our personal goals and like, there's balance with both masculine and feminine. And I think that what we find is like most high achievers or like people who are like really like goal oriented are lean really heavily in that masculine energy. And even when we like take breaks for ourselves, like the breaks are still in that like masculine mindset. Like, oh, I'm going to like run a marathon. Like, that's what I'm going to do. Like, it's like, that's still like a very like, that's like, and you think, oh, I'm making all this time to like, that was like me in my 20s. I'm like, oh, I'm like running marathons and I'm like taking spin classes and I'm waking up at 5 a.m. to like go to boot camp. And like, there were a lot of things that like, I was like, you know, athletically very healthy at that time, but that wasn't like that. I thought that was like my self-care time. Like that, in some part about running is meditative. So like there's a piece of that, but like, it was very different than like going to like a slow flow yoga class where you're really like thinking inward. And it's very different than meditating. And I think that especially a lot of people who are very driven and who are very like high achievement, we look at those like slower things, like the feminine energy things. And we think like, that's a waste of time. Like, I'm not going to sit on my couch for 5 minutes and do nothing. Like, that's a waste of time. I could be like doing things during that.
Yeah.
So you really like, I found for myself, I really have to like, and I still will slip back, like I said, into like, I don't have time for that. But the way I got around it, now it's like more of my lifestyle. Like when I get out of it or when I was first getting into it, I just set I basically set like really accomplishable goals around it. Like I'd be like my first entry point into like slowing down was I would do Headspace for 5 minutes a day. Like that was my goal. 5 minutes a day, Headspace. That was it. Now I try to do more yoga and sound baths. I have a lot more that I try to do now. But like for at first it was just like 5 minutes a day Headspace. Yeah. And then it's like, okay, my achiever is trying to like achieve this little goal that I have. Like, so it was like a way for me to, it's so funny too. Like we went to, my husband and I went on a vacation last year to, or maybe it was a year and a half ago. And we're both such like busy doers. Like we can't sit on a beach and like just chill for like 8 hours. Like, but we also want to relax. So like our relaxing vacation was we went to this place in Arizona. It's called Savannah Wellness Resort. It's great. And they have like all these like, they have yoga, meditation, like all these like you could take classes all day. And we just like crammed our schedule with like classes. And so they were all like, it was super relaxing because it was like all these like very relaxing, like, inward kind of stuff. But it was like the way we almost had to like force ourselves to relax by like filling our schedule with relaxing things, which is like what works for us. Versus like, I couldn't have just gone and like sat by the pool for 8 hours. Like that wouldn't work for me. And I'd be on my phone, like doing like emailing if like, that's what if I let it, my personal self take control. So.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's something I'm working on too. It's, I went on a retreat with one of my teams recently, and during that retreat, we forced ourselves to take some like just chill time of meditating or sitting in the hot tub or whatever. Right. But at one of the moments, everyone else was just out, getting changed or getting ready for dinner or something like that. And I just sat in the chair and I just sat there, didn't play on my phone, didn't do anything. I just stared out over the valley and the river or whatever. And I just sat there. And it occurred to me how rare it is for me to just sit somewhere and do nothing, like not read a book, not play on a phone or whatever, just exist, just be, right? And it was something I told myself I would try harder to work into my day-to-day routine, but it's hard because it's one thing if you're out on a retreat and that's kind of part of the purpose and you've carved out the time, but like day to day, to your point, like whenever I'm not doing something that feels productive, even if it's just like cleaning up the house or whatever, like something where I feel like I've accomplished something at the end of the time, I just start getting all this like feeling of discomfort and guilt bubbling up, which obviously is something I need to work on. Right. But I think that's part of it is like, that's okay too. You can't grow all the time. Like nature has cycles, life has cycles, right? You have to have the slow periods, the sleep periods, the hibernation periods, the calm, chill periods, and the growth and energy periods. So it's something that like the high achiever or whatever that you're talking about, where it's just go, go, go all the time. You can't infinitely go. You need to be able to pause, stop, and recharge your batteries. And that's something I'm working on finding ways to do it. But I'm at the moment kind of probably similar to you in that if I'm going to do it, I kind of have to like schedule it and tell myself that it's part of the plan rather than just do it. So I've got to work through that mindset.
Totally. Well, and that's why like the things like guided meditation or like, cause it's like, you're not like, I still can't, like, I've been like doing this for years now. I still have trouble just sitting there and meditating for 5. My mind will go places, but like, if I can like pop on a guided meditation, like I'm good. Like, and so it's kind of like just figuring out what works for us and, trying to do like in small bits and then growing on it, like anything.
Right. Well, speaking of something sort of similar, I think it was in your manifesting challenge that you talk about limiting beliefs. And I haven't dug super deep in there, but I've read a little bit about it and started trying to think through my own potential limiting beliefs. But through your practice so far, have you uncovered some limiting beliefs that were holding you back that you've somehow found a way to, I don't know if cure is the right word, but like get past and rewire those limiting beliefs?
Yeah. So I've identified like my biggest limiting belief is that you have to, I have several of them. I think like the one that really, really like I'm still trying to work on is the belief that you have to put in more like hours, like work harder, like more hours equals more success. And and for me, like those more hours are like computer hours. And it's like, and I look back, I'm like, why is this like, why am I like this? And I was like, I'm not like I don't consider myself like the typical entrepreneur. Like I was never someone who would have like dropped out of school or like did my own thing. Like I was like a straight A student, like perfectionist. Like that was like I work really hard. I'd study really hard, get good grades, and I get rewarded for it. I'd get into good schools. I'd get like financially rewarded. Like I get $100, I'd get like an A for a quarter. Like there's just like things like that. Like I was like taught that good grades is good and working harder and studying harder is good. And I do think that like that served me. I have no regrets about all that. I think that served me really well, but it also ultimately like put me in this, and I look back at like my time as in management consulting. And when I started, I think by the time I left management consulting, I was great at it. Like I learned, I was there for 4 years. I learned so much. And by the time I left, I was, and I still do like some freelance, some of that work freelance on the side. I'm like good at it now. I've become good at it, but I had to learn. When I started, I was not like, because consulting is all about like 80-20. And I came from the world of like audit, CPA, which is about perfection, like black and white.
It's about 110%.
Totally different. Yeah. And it's so funny because I took all like the tests in business school, like about like, what should you do with your career? And like management consultant was on the bottom. I still did it. But like, I would look at my time there and I was in the office. I'd get into the office at like 7 a.m. before I went to get there, and I'd work until like 3 a.m. I'd be like the last person there. And I just thought like, if I just work harder. And I did like finally, I think like I think by like doing that, I was able to force myself into like ultimately, you know, not just the hours, but like I ultimately like got really good at it. But that was like, I just look back at my life and a lot of the things I was rewarded for was like the hours and or more work. And so now as like an entrepreneur, first of all, like I'm forced into the situation where I don't have unlimited hours because I have 2 kids. I started my entrepreneurial journey without kids. Now I have 2 kids, a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. And it's like super important to me that I get time with them. Like I know for a fact I will personally regret it if I don't get the time with them right now. And so I'm kind of capped at how much I can work in a week. And that for me, like I still struggle with like, I still am like, well, am I ever going to be able to like reach these big goals I want because I don't work hard enough? And I'm constantly having to remind myself like, yes, like it's just working like smarter, not harder. So, and for me, the way I try to get past that is like looking at examples of like finding other people who like are like have accomplished, like can accomplish more with less and stuff like that. And also like recognizing like, hey, like I might not be at my computer from like, you know, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., but like my business partner is my husband and we're talking about work like half that time. So like I'm still working, like we're strategizing, like planning, like all those things so I think it's also getting my head around like a lot of the things like in my head, I don't classify as work, like actually is work, but they're fun. So I like don't think they're work. So but that's my biggest one. And I know a lot of like, I think that I think a lot of us have been trained to think like harder, working more, but like success and wealth and all those things can come with ease and joy. It doesn't have to be painful and hard. So.
Yeah. And maybe it goes back to that, you know, masculine mindset thing again of the hustle culture of, you got to work harder than everyone else if you want to be successful. Right. And there's all these really successful people out there who are constantly saying that, like they're being interviewed and they're like, how'd you get where you are? I just outworked everyone else. You know, it's like the common phrase. Yeah. And then later, once they're millionaires and exited their companies or whatever, then you start hearing them be like, you know what, work-life balance. You know, you gotta, totally. You gotta like pace yourself. Totally. But they don't say that until after they've achieved their success. Right. And I just, I feel like that's part of the toxic work culture that we have is that everyone needs to out-compete each other and work longer hours and stay later and so on and so forth because they're all trying to keep up with the boss or something like that. But to your point, that's not necessarily efficient. Not only are you not working your most efficient if you're just working nonstop, but I've also heard something to the effect of in like corporate environments that like people spend an average of like 10% of their time or like something very low like that actually being productive. The rest of the time is just like they're doing stuff to look busy. Right. And it's because of that weird, like we got to work harder culture. Totally. Whereas if we celebrated more of the let's work smarter culture, what if people only had to work 10 hours a week to accomplish what they were doing and they could opt to work a little bit more if they want to get that next pay raise or to get a master's degree while working or something like that. But instead of wasting all this time working hard, we could just spend more time working smart.
Totally. Well, and I feel like
or
as like
less time.
when you're, no, exactly. And I feel like when you're sitting like at when I'm looking like across the company, I'm like, there are so many things. Like the big thing I'm really trying to work on is like systematizing everything, and you can't systematize every little thing, but you can do a lot of things. And like, if there's things that you're doing, like whether it's like in your business or your household, that is just like repetitive and it's like unfulfilling. Like, can you carve it off to somebody? Like, or can you outsource it? Or can you how can you systematize it? Like, there's like a really simple example of like at home, like and I don't do this every week, but like the weeks that I like, and I literally use ChatGPT for this. Like, this is how like ChatGPT is like amazing for everything, but I'll plug in ChatGPT. Hey, trying to come up with like a 5-day meal plan for my family. Like we like try to eat plant-based, gluten-free. Like I have kids. So like I like give them the criteria of what I want. Like give me a table with breakfast, lunch, and dinner for like 5 days a week, and I'll spit it out. And like, there's like my meal. Like I would have before like been looking on recipe because it would have taken me hours before. It takes me like 2 minutes to come up with that. Now I can make some little modifications. I say, great, give me the shopping list. It gives me the shopping list. I can like get my shopping done and like quickly. And then like, and then I like don't have to think about like meal planning all week. And that's like even just those little micro decisions that you have to like wake up. You have to plan so much more with the kids. Cause like, if it's just like me and my husband, I'm like, oh, we can like, skip breakfast, whatever. Like we could just go with the flow. But like with the kids, I'm like, I have to have like 3 meals for them, or I feel like I have to. And, but like I could, instead of like waking up and be like, okay, like, let me open up the fridge. Like, let me think what I'm going to make. I'm like, cool. Okay. I'm doing this for breakfast. Done. Like, and it just like, even just like eliminating those micro decisions from your day. It's like how, like, the Mark Zuckerberg's like wear the same thing every day. Like, I'm like, that's like, yeah. Makes, I still like aspire to figure out like what my uniform is, but like, it makes a lot of sense because like, you don't have to think about it. Like you have to say it, it's just easy. And it's like, I think that for me, like, that's my, like the key thing I'm trying to do in my life right now is like systematize everything as much as I can. The things that aren't, don't need to take up time or shouldn't take up time. And it's amazing how much time you can cut out of your day if you just focus on that.
And it's not just time too, right? Like working smarter is about saving time, but it's also energy because I don't know if all the science has been validated. But I seem to remember reading something about like decision fatigue as being a thing where, picking out an outfit sounds like just a basic daily task, but it's like a few decisions that you have to make, right? And then figuring out what you're going to eat. That's another few decisions you're going to have to make. And so many things that have to pop up before you even get to work. And then you have to like make big decisions as the CEO of a company or something like that. So eliminating as many of those decisions you have to make as possible allows you to put more energy into the important decisions. Like, who cares what I'm going to wear? Work, right? Like, does it really matter? Especially like, it probably doesn't matter. So like, just have your uniform.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, streamline that. And then that way you can put more energy into the things that matter. So I think it's partly that, but it also reminds me a little bit of the book. I think it's called The Big Leap, where he talks about kind of finding your zone of genius, like the area that kind of best suits your skill set and your passions and all that kind of stuff. Figure out the way to spend most of your time in that zone of genius and delegate everything else. So like you said, if there's tasks on your to-do list, whether it's work or life or whatever, find a way to get that off of your to-do list so that you can spend more time doing what you're uniquely suited to do. And to some degree, it kind of sounds like a very privileged statement. I'm sure there's lots of people rolling their eyes like, oh yeah, so like I'm just going to go get a house cleaner or, get a virtual assistant or whatever. And I get that kind of idea behind this. But I think that what makes me think it's especially important for everybody is when you're not doing what you're uniquely suited to do, you're kind of depriving the world of your magic, right? If you're not bringing your skill sets, your passion, your energy, your whatever, your creativity to the world because you're spending time like, I don't know, cleaning house, taking out the trash, meal planning, whatever, like you're wasting all your time and energy on those kind of things that anybody could be doing, then there's stuff that the world won't get because you didn't prioritize properly. Totally. So I feel like to some degree, if you're impact driven, it's a good idea to try to peel anything off your plate that feels like, unnecessary busy work for you, because you can spend more time driving like big impact.
And I think it's just like a good exercise to do, even if you know, like at this moment, you can't do it all. Like, so for like and then it like helps you think about like manifesting, like, what are you working towards? So like for me, like I want so badly, like a personal chef, not like to be like, I have a personal chef, but because it's so important for me to feed my kids healthy, delicious, and my family and myself, healthy, delicious, like balanced meals.
Right.
Like that's really important to me. I have fun cooking with like the kids. Like that's like fun for me. I do find some joy in cooking, but I also don't feel like I have the time in the like to put my heart into cooking like 3 meals a day. So like I end up just like throwing things together like really quick. I make it work. It's like fine, but I would much rather be spending that time and like doing other things and knowing that like every morning and every evening like there's going to be great meals. I don't have a personal chef right now, but like I aspire for that. Like that's like, so it's not like all of a sudden I have like all this, like, I'm going to do that. But like, it's like when I think of like what I'm manifesting, like what I'm working towards, like what my abundance goals are, it's not like, because it's that is like a very privileged thing to be able to have a personal chef. So like, if I could do that, amazing. But like the intentions behind it are really like, I don't feel like selfish intentions. The intentions behind it are so I can like feed my family with the best food possible, and continue to take like the things that like you said, like I can add more value and provide a job for somebody who loves doing that. Well, I can go take my time and spend it in things that I can like do even more good for the world. So it's like, I think that's also like what helps if you're I sometimes like feel guilty for even wanting that, like, and that's like another like it's another limiting belief thing. That like if you want things, or it's like it's because you're like greedy, and it's like that's not the case. Like if like there's and that's where you have to separate like your ego driven goals from like your really like values driven goals. And literally like every part of me has a goal of wanting a personal chef, I think is not, it's all based around health and like the built like other like, those kinds of things. Like, and I feel like that's also the other limiting belief though, that like, especially because I'm a founder of like a sustainable, eco-friendly company. I'm like, ooh, like I have to be careful. Like I also need to be like, it's funny things that we come up with in our head. But then at the end of the day, if you can come back to like, this is the intention is so pure and true, and it's not like an ego driven intention. It's not like that. You kind of have to just get over some of that stuff. So
yeah, totally. Yeah. And I think that's one of the limiting beliefs I'm discovering in myself, is that same kind of idea of like wanting, for example, more money. It feels greedy, and therefore I don't do it. Like I'm not on this journey to stockpile money for no reason. However, when I think about all the things I could be doing with money, if I had more of it to make a bigger impact in the world, that's a different mindset, right? So just kind of shifting it. Like if we have a good reason for it, then maybe it's not greedy.
Yeah.
If you just want it because like you think it'll be cool or bragging rights or outcompete your neighbor, like have the fancier house or whatever, that's not a good reason. But if you want a bigger house so you can rent out rooms for cheap to like poor college students, well, great, then get yourself a bigger house. But if you want a bigger house just because it looks cool or makes you feel important, that's probably not the way to do it.
Right.
I'm sure we could continue diving into that for a long time, but I figured while we're here, we should also talk about Sun and Swell a little bit. So I know some of this manifesting has helped you on your journey with Sun and Swell, and you've talked about how you kind of focus on organic, plant-based pantry staples with compostable packaging. But I also know that's not where the company originally started. So I think some of where you are now maybe had to do with some of this manifesting, but can you talk about the journey from where you started to where you are now?
Yeah. So when we launched Sun and Swell, it was, the original idea was like, we wanted to be more of a traditional CPG company, like a new, like a Cliff Bar, like a good for you, like snack food brand. Like that's kind of like what the vision was. And we launched with a line of energy bites, and they were in this, they were in like little stand-up pouches. They were super cute. And like, we kind of quickly gained traction in like coffee shops and all these like cool places. And we were really proud of like the brand we were building. We felt like we had a really cool brand that we were proud of, healthy foods. But at the end of the day, like we just started becoming really sensitive to the fact that we were using all this plastic. And I'm not like I wouldn't consider myself like an extreme environmentalist. Like I feel like I'm the person who does the best I can, but I didn't go to school for environmental studies. Like I'm just like trying to improve every day as like a person. Like it's just, for me, it's like if I can do a little bit better every day, and like if I can like be as conscious as possible. Like I drive an EV, but I don't ride a bike. I feel like I'm like that kind of person, it's like,
yeah.
So, but I was recognizing, hey, we're trying to build this big brand. And right now we're ordering these like pallets of plastic, like that were created just for us. These little tiny pieces of single-use plastic that we're creating as a brand. And it just didn't sit right with us. And where we're based in California, like Patagonia is like 25 minutes away. Like we're like at this like Santa Barbara is like where Earth Day, like the first Earth Day in the US was like born. Like we're very like it's just like personally we kind of had those feelings, but also like where we're like, oh my gosh, like we were just feeling inspired to do something different. So we thought like there has to be a way to do this without plastic. And we discovered that there were like packaging technologies out there that were not plastic, like compostable film. And we kind of jumped like headfirst into it without really testing it. Like we're just like, we're doing this. Like we made a quick decision. I naively thought that nobody else was doing it because they either didn't care or didn't like, it wasn't like a value to them. Totally wrong. There's actually tons of big brands out there that do care and do want to do something with it, but compostable packaging is very disruptive to your supply chain. And it's not so, like, there's just all these complexities with it. So kind of learned that the hard way, but that's, I guess, what, that's what it's all about, I guess. But we kind of reached this pivotal moment, like and it was at 2020. It was like right before COVID hit. Where I was like, we got to make a choice. We're either going to build a traditional CPG brand in plastic and just focus on the snacks. That's what we're doing. Or we're going to try to tackle the plastics problem and focus on removing single-use plastic from the packaged food industry. And like, we're evolving our company to like fit that mission. And it was like, honestly, a very tough decision. Then didn't know which way we were going to go. But then when COVID hit, it wiped out like 80% of our revenue because we were selling mainly in coffee shops, fitness studios, corporate offices, all of those shut down or were very open and very limited capacity. And so we kind of had this moment of like stillness to be like, if we were going to start a company again, like which direction would we go? And we were also in survival mode. So we got to sell something like online. Like, so we were trying to figure it all out. And it led us to kind of pursuing this, like it gave us that chance to be like, well, I think like we could do this plastic free thing. And it kind of gave us permission to do that. Like it gave us permission to refocus.
Right.
And which again, like that's why I said, like every hardship is ultimately there for a reason. Not that I don't want to say COVID was a good thing, but for our business, like it allowed us to go in the direction we really wanted to. Since that's kind of what we've been pursuing ever since, is trying to figure out how to eliminate single-use plastic in the packaged food industry. And like our first step in doing that is by building a brand that doesn't use plastic so we can like prove out the model and show it can be done. And that's like,
nice.
So we've been spending our time on, and it started with like evolving our product. At the time we just had energy bites. Like what we heard was like from people is like, hey, we like don't just want these energy bites. Like can you give us like trail mixes and stuff without, and so we expanded our product line. And like, I think most snack food companies or CPG companies, their innovation dollars go into like creating more innovative product inside. We're really focused on just offering, of course, healthy, of course, delicious. Like those are table stakes, like those have to be part of it. But also like, it's just more being able to offer a solution. So like our snacks are like dried fruits and trail mixes versus like the new, like, mushroom jerky chip or something, it's like, we're really focused on the simplicity of the snacks and giving people things that they're already familiar with in just like a more sustainable way. And we sell online, but then our big channels of focus are corporate offices because a lot of them have sustainability initiatives and are trying to eliminate plastic from their break rooms. And also like hospitality, That's another channel where we found that they're really trying to eliminate like the higher end hotels are trying to eliminate plastic from their properties. And so we're kind of our channel strategy is informed by like who's trying to solve the problem, what channels have the problem right now, and we're trying to solve for them, versus saying like, hey, this is what we're offering and we're pushing it in grocery. We're really just trying to solve the problem based on like where the biggest problem is right now.
Right. Yeah, that's a really interesting kind of case study of evolution.
Mm-hmm.
It's everything's about priorities, right? Like putting priorities in order of hierarchy.
Yeah.
And when you have healthy snack, innovative healthy snack or something like that as the top priority, then that's a whole bunch of different decisions you're going to make versus, we want maybe less innovative, but like still healthy snacks, but like focus on better packaging, right? Because then that's different customers, different promise to your consumer, different supply chain, different all sorts of things. So coming to a point where you have to make that decision and pick a lane to go in, I think is sometimes like scary, but it's exactly what you need. Like you said, you don't want to say COVID was a good thing, but it was for your business. It kind of reminds me that so many people hesitate to make big decisions, like a pivot in their business or their life, because of the fear of the unknown. Like, oh God, what if I go down this path and it's worse than the path I'm on? And I always butcher the quote, but there's a quote that's something to the effect of, people don't change until the pain of not changing is greater than the fear of making the change, like something like that. And I think COVID forced that on a lot of people, whether it was a business pivot, like, oh, there goes all my retail business. Like I was just talking to Brew Doctor about, he had tea shops, Townsend tea shops, and the kombucha company. And then, he was running both of them, but then COVID kind of wiped out the tea shops. So he was like, well, time to go all in on the Brew Doctor to go in on the kombucha, right? But there's so many times where other circumstances make the decision for us. But I think part of what's cool about manifesting, to tie it back to that, is it's kind of like preemptively making some of those decisions because you're getting clear about what's important to you and deciding ahead of time, like what your top priority is. So, I love that this was a case study in like figuring out which thing was most important to your business. And then once you really get clear about that problem, there's lots of different solutions, like you said, right? Like once you got clear about eliminating plastic and healthy snacks, and it's like, oh, great, corporate hospitality, all these channels that maybe you were completely ignoring before now make complete sense. And your pitch is really compelling and clear to them because you align with exactly what they're looking for.
Well, I think that there's like, I heard this thing about, and maybe this is easier to define, like if you're like a second time entrepreneur, but as a first time entrepreneur, everyone talks to you about product market fit. And some school of thought says, hey, if you have a product and people are buying it, you have product market fit. Okay, well, like maybe, but I think there's also a difference between having, I heard the analogy once of like a vitamin versus a pain pill, which like the vitamin is like, you have that, like, it's not needed, but like, it's a nice to have. It's cool. Like that's like, and that's where it's like, if you can win on like, if you have tons of marketing dollars and you can win on branding, like you can have a vitamin and like crush it. But then there's like the pain pill, and the pain pill is like when somebody actually has a problem and you have a solution and they're looking for the problem and they need you to fix their pain and you got the pill for them. Like, and it's two different school of thought. And I think with the vitamin example, like I said, with like the right marketing dollars, you could do it, but it also that feels a bit more like pushing a boulder up a hill versus the pain pill. It's like when you can nail that and you can figure out what the solution is, get in front of the right people, then at least from a demand standpoint, it's like just starts flowing. And I don't want to say that like anything about like that was a big shift in our business from like just a demand and from like what people want. It's like, oh, like once we started solving this very specific problem, it just started to come a lot easier from a growth standpoint. Operationally, it's still hard and complex. Like nothing about it's easy, but that is, to me, that was like a big shift in like being like, oh, this is really product market fit. And what we had before was really cool and people were buying it. And like, but this is a very different now that we're like actually solving a real problem. And I think that like that, and it's, I think being able to, I think that's especially what's hard with like the pivots and especially with like building a business is like, you might say like, well, we could go exactly what you said. Like, is it going to be better or is it going to be worse? It's hard to know that sometimes. Sometimes you like have to be forced into it. But I saw a good somebody once explained this well, and I can't remember where I saw this, but like, we all know like growth isn't linear. We all like hold ourselves to the standard that it should be linear, right? Like we all like, we know it doesn't go like this, but we still expect it to go like this.
Yeah.
And like, if it goes like this, like we're not like happy with it. But yeah, exactly. But I saw like somebody once described it as like growth. It's not just like this. Like it's actually like you start at a point and you make a decision and you go one way. And then you might have to go back. Like, but that's okay. Like it might be a series of going like out and back, not just up and down, but also like veering off in one direction and coming back because you realize like it wasn't the right decision. And this is, I think, where all like tying it back to kind of our conversation earlier, like this is where like the mindset helps you, like as somebody who used to have an incredible fear of failure, and I've kind of like gotten through, I've kind of gotten, it's probably still some, but like I've gotten over a lot of that. Like, I think if you're like too afraid of, and there's ways to manage it like responsibly risk-wise. Like if you're like going one path, you're like, okay, well I can like test this and I can test this. And that's like what Google does, right? Like they have like their employees spend 20% of their time on new things. Like that's literally like, I might get the number wrong, but something like that. And it's like, the point is like, go try random things and maybe make some mistakes, but come back to it. And I feel like that culture of make mistakes, it's okay, learn from it, move on. I don't think that's embedded in enough of us as it should be. And I hope it's embedded like in in the future generation more so. But I know that was something I learned like much later in life, that like all that's okay. And I think if we all knew or more okay with that, we would make bolder choices.
And I think it's becoming more common in the business industry. And I think what I've seen is it's been this merger of design thinking and business, where originally those two things were completely separate. No business school would ever dare teach a design class, right? But in more recent times now, this business mindset of you write a plan and you stick to that plan no matter what. And if you ever have a dip downwards or have a bad experiment, you're fired or you're a failure or something. And there is that mindset versus the design mindset is, let's do some research. Let's make some prototypes. Let's throw some stuff out there and see what happens. And then we'll find what works. We'll take that idea and we'll refine it some more and test that and keep going. And it's all about iteration and learning, right? And I think mushing those two things together, the business culture is starting to become a little bit more of a fail forward kind of mindset, where it's like, what's the point of a 10-year business plan? Nobody's ever on the same business path for 10 years, right? So it's now more, hey, let's figure out what problem we're trying to solve. Let's come up with a handful of ways we could solve that. Let's start testing some of those ideas, and whichever one seems the most promising, let's put that out in the marketplace. And then even then, there's still going to be room to like refine it and tweak it, and either change the messaging or realize that you hit a limitation. Like you said, you're maybe solving more of a nice to have instead of a need to have, which reminds me of a quote. I feel like it might have even been Tony Robbins or something that said this, that I saw in a video once, but he said, people don't do their shoulds, they do their must. So it's kind of like, I should be taking vitamins. I should be working out regularly. I should do all this kind of stuff. But until you shift that should in your mind to a must, it's going to happen sporadically at best. Right. But once you shift it to a must, like I must take a pain pill, my head is killing me, or something like that, or I must get my business turned around because COVID just wiped out 80% of my business or something like that, then that's when you take action. So I love that you kind of made that note about the product market fit of finding those musts instead of the shoulds will be a much easier path. But then also just this idea of getting out there and not beating yourself up over a little bit of backwards step or a side step along the way, because that's the name of the game. Like you're out here to solve a problem, and solving a problem isn't linear.
Absolutely.
Love it. Another thing that I think is worth noting too is kind of this idea of over innovating, which I think some companies do. It's like when you're trying to make, like you said, mushroom jerky and do compostable packaging and have a new direct to consumer business model and all these kind of things. It just takes so much to communicate, and people are confused and they don't know what you are or what you're trying to sell or how it fits in their life. But one thing that's interesting about what you kind of pivoted is like, you know what, maybe if we're going to focus on this compostable packaging, if that's the problem we're going to solve, or packaging plastic in general, if that's the problem we're going to solve, maybe we can just sell trail necks and dried fruit and stuff. And it doesn't have to be the most innovative food ever, because the problem we're solving is this, this problem right here. And it's easier to talk about, and it's easier to pitch, and it's easier to move things forward when you're not trying to tell people the 15 reasons why you're different. If you can tell them the one reason, it makes it click much faster. And they can learn some of the other reasons you're different.
Yeah, and a really simple example of that is, like I said, we started out with the bites. We've actually now turned those bites to bars. We still do offer the bites, and like D2C we basically turn the formulas into bars, because what we were finding when we were like going after like the corporate break rooms, for example, we're like, hey, like we're like, sustainable and healthy, and we have these like bites, and they're like, well, what are versus like when we can come in and say like, hey, we just have like a bar it's a bar that's wrap plastic free, and it checks all your boxes on health that you're looking for, because they do like that's, and it's yummy. Like it has like that, they care about those things too, but like there's a lot of healthy, yummy bars out there. Like there are other bars that are healthy and yummy. Like we're not gonna like, but like if we're like, you could just swap out one of your other bars for this one, like that's so much easier for them to have to be like, ooh, what do these bites replace? Do they replace a bar? Do they replace like a chip? Like what do these replace? Like it's just easier. And that's exactly to your point. We found out we were selling like too many value. Like when we first started, we just put our bites in composable. We're trying to sell all these things. And we're trying to sell too many points of differentiation. Like, let's just sell one point of differentiation. It's funny because it's food, and nobody buys food based on packaging. So like no consumer buys food based on packaging. B2B, if they have plastic free goals, that's the way in. But it still has so that's been like, we've had to really work. Like for us, it's been a lot of, even every different channel has different marketing messages. Cause like no consumer is going to buy something just because of packaging, food just because of packaging. But if you understand, like, it's like, I think water is a good example. Like if you're like, okay, like my liquid death versus like my plastic water bottle, and the same inside, it's still water, but one's like a can and one's a plastic. Okay, I'm going to go for the can. You have to like first. So that's like it's like a hierarchy of like how you're messaging, like, and that varies by channel too. Right. So that's something that we've,
totally.
Again, like you, if you're trying to do too many things and two different channels and too many different products, like it's a lot. And we still, I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with that, is like, we want to do more. And it's like, do one thing really well and then do a second thing really well, Yeah.
And if you are doing more, it's okay. You just don't try to communicate everything at once. Let some other things come out over time. Like even with liquid death, that example, they're in a can and they have death to plastic or whatever as a tagline, but it's really like 3 or 4, fourth in hierarchy. Like they're really just trying to come out with a unique brand that's different, and serves their pain point. Was people didn't want to look like a loser holding like an Evian water bottle at a concert or something like that, right? They still wanted to look cool, and a cool can that looks like a beer can or an energy drink. What was the problem they're solving? So the product didn't really matter that much.
Yeah.
I think the over innovating, when you start trying to solve those problems, the goal should be to turn question marks and exclamation points. So instead of like when you're pitching something to people, instead of them having 50 questions of, well, why this, or where do I put it? Or what are consumers saying? Or what shelf does this go on? Or, what is acai, or, like whatever it is, whatever questions they have, you should work towards turning it to exclamation points. And by which I mean, if you're speaking directly to the problems they want solved, they're just going to be like, well, that's exactly what we've been looking for. Thanks for calling. Like, we'll take 60 pellets or whatever. Right. Yeah. But when you're in there pitching them something they don't know they need, and they don't know why they would need it or why their customers need it, then it's just a bunch of question marks and barriers for you to get on shelf. And then more questions when the customers get there and they're like, what is a energy bite or whatever, and is that like a bar? Is it like, what are the calorie differences? Is this going to fill me up? How many bites do I need to eat? Like, it's just so many questions, right?
Like you solved most of my problems, but I have all these other ones, so I'm still confused. Exactly. I love that. That
cool
framework.
Yeah. So, oh man, so much to talk about. I know that you're doing a lot beyond packaging. and we don't have to go into super detail, but I love giving shout outs for things like B Corp and women owned. So maybe just touch real quick on why you've decided to become B Corp and what's important about being kind of celebrating or recognizing women owned businesses.
With the B Corp, that's something we did early on. I actually at the time didn't know much about it, but other than like I knew Patagonia was a B Corp, so I was like interested in it, and I was kind of introduced to some people who were helping businesses become certified, and I was like, well, it sounds like something I want to do. It sounds like something that'll be much easier to do at the beginning of the journey versus later in the journey. So we implemented we basically got our B Corp cert like within, I think, after year one, and it actually has made it.
Wow.
I think it at the time we're just, there's not, it made it a lot easier because it just has kind of acted as guardrails as we've grown our business versus if you're like $100 million business and then try to like go from not B to B Corp to being a B Corp, maybe it will be kind of easy depending on what your business currently is, but it can also be really hard and expensive and like require a lot of changes. So for us, it was something we did early on and just has given us guardrails as we've grown. So I think that's great. I would say from a sales perspective, it's not as often that we see the benefit in B2B settings. If we are trying to sell to like another B Corp, they definitely value it because as B Corps, we try to prioritize buying other B Corps. But we do see consumers like learning more and becoming more educated and looking for that seal now than they used to.
Yeah.
Women owned is definitely more helpful in the B2B setting. So we can you don't need a women owned certification for a DTC business because you can just say it, like you put on your website, like female founder, like you can put that in and that's enough to like give consumers a validation. But for B2B, like the companies that have like the requirements or like the goals in place to support minority women owned, they want a legitimate certification to make sure like you really are like women owned and acting as like women owned. So for example, what could happen is we could call ourselves women owned, but I could own 1% of the company and have no decision-making power.
Right.
Like that's not what they're trying to support. They're trying to support like majority women owned. A female is making the decisions that are like the big decisions are involved in the big decision making. So that's what the certification is there for, to like validate like you really are like a women owned and run business. And that's for the business, for our wholesale partners that do have goals around supporting women owned, they need to see the certification. So we actually didn't get it for a long time until we got to the point where we were starting to do a lot more like work with corporate offices. And it was just coming up more and more like them asking about it. And we'd be like, yeah, we are. And they're like, great. But unless you have the certification, like it doesn't, we're still happy to support you, but it doesn't like, we can't, it doesn't like, it just, they're happy to support because they want to, but it wasn't like checking that box for them. So
Right.
we ended up getting that about a year ago. And I think that does help with like sales, which is the point of it. Like it's supposed to help support with sales for your business. So we found that to be like valuable from like an ROI standpoint.
I love that you made that point too, because there's dozens, if not hundreds of certifications an impact driven business could choose from. And
right.
Like in an ideal world, maybe you have all of them, but at the same time, it's kind of like a doing good business tax kind of situation where we're already paying our team more. We're paying supply chain, fair wages. We're paying more for packaging that's more sustainable. Like all these kind of things are expensive. So then to add on like dozens of certifications that are also expensive to keep up is difficult. So I hear a lot of Better for the World brands talking about like, well, which certifications should I choose of all the certifications? Like which are the most important? So I love that you were talking about like finding the ones that actually move the needle in some way, make a ton of sense, right? Because we can't, again, do it all, either pay for it all, but also communicate it all anyway. So your front panel is limited, or the footer of your website can't have 60 logos in it. So finding the ones that are true to your brand and will make a difference with your primary customer or consumer. I think that's what I often advise people is like focus there. Everything else will be a nice to have someday if you want it. But like start there and then
ones that'll make a difference.
Communicate those. And then over time you could do others or communicate others, but don't overwhelm people with 60 certifications, right?
Totally. Exactly.
I love that. Cool. I've got a bazillion other questions I could ask you. Maybe I'll just have to bring you back on the podcast at some point. But let's just go ahead and jump into a rapid round to wrap up the conversation.
Sure.
All right. So what's your cheat day indulgence, since you focus so much on health food? What's something that you eat that's not so healthy?
So I am a big sweets person. So like, I don't know, like a good donut or a cookie or something like that. Like not a healthy cookie, but like a good old chocolate chip cookie, something like that is like usually like once a weekend, forget something like that.
Perfect. Love it. Okay. So what's your favorite book that you've read recently?
So I actually haven't finished. I'm about halfway through, but it's so good that I can't not share this one. It's called Driven by Gino Wickman. And he's the one who wrote Traction, which I feel like if you haven't read the book, you know his systems. It's about like having rocks and stuff like that. Like there you go.
Literally on my
Did
desk.
you know he has a new, do you know he
I
has a new
didn't know
one?
about Driven.
Oh,
no, that's
sorry.
cool.
It's not called Driven. I said the wrong name. It's called Shine. Sorry. He
Shine,
references
okay.
a book called Driven. The book is called Shine by Gino Wickman.
Okay.
It's his brand new one, and it's so good because basically exactly what we were talking about earlier. He made all his money, he had all his things, then he's like, I'm still unfulfilled. And so then he's gone and he's like had his kind of awakening. But now, of course, he's like systematized how you have both like success and happiness. So I'm like, awesome. This is like right up my alley. So, but in the book, he talks about another book called Driven, which talks about, and he highlights how like people who are driven actually have like the difference in their brain function of like, explains kind of how like we are the way we are. But anyways, so good. I feel like reading it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel seen. So I'm halfway through, but I can recommend it without finishing it.
Is Driven also his book or just someone else's book that he mentions?
No, Driven is a different book by a doctor that explains why, why people who are driven, which I guess is defined as like 10% of the population, are the way we are.
Cool. Okay.
So, and like the kind of, but I think he summarizes the key points in his book. So
awesome. Well, I'll have to check out both. What's the best piece of advice you've received?
Trust the universe.
Oh, nice. And
it's all okay if you do.
And if you're not woo enough to say universe, I would also like modify that to like, trust the community or the people around you, right? Like when you put stuff out there that you want to do, be vulnerable, etc. Like most of the time people are going to welcome you with warm arms and offer to help, right? Trust your gut's a good one too. That's something I'm trying to work more on.
Everything's going to be okay. Like all versions of that. Yeah.
Like I'm a overthinker for sure. So I'm trying to work more on listening to my gut to make quicker decisions. Who's an impact-driven leader you admire and why?
I feel like this is a little cliche, but just Yvon Chouinard from, I feel like Patagonia is an example of a business that has taught many entrepreneurs, like in my like the millennial generation and probably beyond that, of course, too. But that you can be a for-profit business, be a large for-profit business, and still like use your business as a force for good. I just feel like it's like the shining example of, and there's of course other businesses that have done that too, but it's a good one. Good example.
Yeah. I mean, he comes up a lot and for good reason, because it's not like he just built a company that innovated in sustainability or that he just happens to be a good leader or he just happened to found a big nonprofit or any of that kind of stuff. It's that he does all of it, right? Like almost every decision he makes, you're like, you know what? Yeah, that's the right decision to make. Like he somehow always finds a way to make the right decision, which is cool.
Yep.
Great. So to wrap up, this podcast is called Brands for a Better World. So what does better for the world mean to you?
Just think leaving it behind in a better place than you found it, like, and kindness, like all around, whether it's to people or the earth or, insects, like all things, like just being kind ultimately is, if we were all kind, we'd all be good.
Yeah. Love it. I appreciate that answer. It's a good one. Cool. Well, thanks for staying on a bit long. Didn't mean to keep you so long, but there's just so much to dive into. So I appreciate you not only just going on this journey, doing what you're doing, and then trying to share it with the world, like with your manifesting challenge or anything else, but then just coming on the show and sharing a little bit more of your story to inspire others. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. To learn more about Kate or Sun and Swell, go to sunandswellfoods.com. If you like this show, remember to help us grow by liking, reviewing, and sharing. If you're new here, don't forget we have over 100 episodes in the archive. Some might be called Evolve CPG, but it's the same show, so dig in for more goodness. If you consider yourself an impact-driven professional, join me over at impactdriven.community, where we're supporting each other's growth as impact leaders.